Hello and welcome you all to JKC online platform. And today we would be covering with chapter number 5 of Auditing and Assurance CA Inter for November 21 revision lecture. Chapter number 5 is auditor's responsibility relating to fraud in the audit of financial statements. So what is the auditor's responsibility relating to fraud? We'll be discussing the entire chapter here. Maximum concepts we'll be covering here. We'll be covering mainly the questions of module first, and thereafter I'll be taking some conceptual questions which can come in the exam, which I feel can come in the exam, will be discussed here. So let us begin with the first question of this chapter, which is the definition of fraud. It's a very simple question, that what is the definition of fraud as per SA 240? SA 240 says fraud is what? That's a very simple question. It's just a basic question which the study material has given, so we are taking this. Any intentional act with an intention to deceive, whether it is done by management, whether it is done by TCWG, employee, third party, any intentional act which is done with an intention to deceive the other party so that one party gets an advantage, illegal advantage, unjust advantage, and the other party loses, that is basically fraud is all about. So it's a very simple definition, and this question will not be asked all alone. It will be there in combination with some other question, that what is the definition of fraud. So that's a very simple definition. 3 words to be named here: intentional act, use of deception to obtain an illegal or unjust advantage. A simple question. The next one says, what is self-revealing errors? And you have to explain the same with the help of some illustration. What is self-revealing errors, guys? It is also there in the booklet. In the question bank we have done this. And question number 2 was there in the JKC book, chapter number 5. Those errors, friends, those errors which becomes appear, the existence of which become apparent, which clearly gets appeared when you are compiling the books of accounts. So whenever you are compiling the accounts, any such error which becomes apparent at that time, which becomes clear at that time, now this is the error, is known as self-revealing. The word itself says self-revealing. The error which gets revealed on its own when you are preparing the final accounts. Like let me just take an example or two. You have withdrawn something from bank, or you have deposited something in bank account, and you have not recorded the same as a contra entry in the cash book. So when you will be preparing the bank reconciliation, you will be able to easily get that error. One more example. Amount received from one particular person is credited to the account of another person. So when you will be preparing the debtors accounts or the creditors account or statement of parties, you will be able to get this error easily. So those errors, when you are finalizing the accounts, when you are compiling the final accounts, those errors, the existence of which becomes clearly apparent at that time, is known as self-revealing error. Now this is a question which is given in the study material, so we had to take this because this is a out of the box question. It's already done in the classroom lectures also. We are covering the study material questions also. What is there in the module? We are covering all those questions. The third question, again a simple question. There are 2 questions in the module, so I have merged both of them in this question. Both ask, what are the techniques of suppressing the cash receipts? And if you remember, whenever a person commits a fraud, one method is defalcation of cash. Either you can inflate the cash payment or you can suppress the cash receipts. The current question asks you suppression of cash receipts, the techniques for suppressing the cash receipts. Again, simple answer. When you do teaming and ladding. Now what is teaming and ladding? Misappropriate the amount received from the first debtor, amount received from subsequent debtor, put it in the first account, amount received from the third debtor, put it in the second debtor account, and this way go on and on and on, so that no debtor remains outstanding for a longer period of time. So that is a technique which is known as teaming and ladding technique. Second, you can suppress the receipts by putting up fictitious rebates, fictitious discounts. The customer doesn't know that the discount is being given, but you put that in the books of accounts. The customer pays you, let's suppose pays you 10,000 rupees. You put a fictitious rebate on his name, allowance on his name for suppose 1,000. So the entry credited will be of 9,000 and 1,000 will be misappropriated and will be put in the pocket of the employee. So this is the second method. Third, a very simple method. A debtor who has paid his full amount is a good debt, but you're writing off it as a bad debt. You're not accounting for the cash sales fully. You're not accounting for some miscellaneous receipts fully. So these are all the cases which indicates that cash receipts have been suppressed, and this is what the question asked you. Both the questions were there. Both the questions gave the same question, that what are the techniques in which the receipts can be suppressed. So I hope this is again simple answer for this. Let us move forward. Take the fourth one, and this is one of the important questions. So listen this question very carefully. The question says, again there were two questions in the module, I merged both of them in a single question. The question says, as an auditor, when you suspected some fraud in the financial statement, at that time you encountered some special circumstances, exceptional circumstances, which is bringing a question mark to your ability whether you should continue performing the audit or not. So I can take any one of them. So let us take the second example, second case which is given. During the audit of a particular company, Mr. Bajaj was a auditor. He encountered certain special or exceptional circumstances that brings into question his ability to continue performing the audit while suspecting a fraud arising from the material misstatement. Explain the steps to be taken in such a case. So the simple question is, in this situation, when the auditor's ability to continue performing the audit is question marked, what he should do? He should not directly withdraw from the engagement and go away. No. The first point you have to write this down is, and this can be asked in correct, incorrect also, multiple choice also. So you be careful with this question. The first thing he has to do is, he has to check whether any professional responsibility, whether any legal responsibility is there in that circumstances. Let's suppose there may be a situation when a certain fraud is suspected, and which is putting some question mark on the auditor's ability to continue performing his audit. He should check whether I should report this thing to certain regulatory authority, to those charged with governance. So whether there is any obligation, it can be a legal obligation, it can be regulatory obligation, it can be some professional obligation, that whether this circumstances needs to be reported somewhere or not. If yes, there are certain responsibilities on you, if there are certain obligations on you, professional or legal, you should first report these things to the TCWG, to the appropriate authorities, to the regulatory authorities. And after doing that, you can, if permitted by law and regulation, you can withdraw from the engagement. And if you are withdrawing from the engagement, do not forget to discuss this thing with the management or those charged with governance, that you are withdrawing, this is the reason for withdrawal, and also consider legal and professional obligations again, that this matter of withdrawal along with the reason need to be reported to some appointing authority, to some regulatory authority. You need to do that also. So what are the three steps or three cases, three things you have to do? First of all, you have to check whether there is any professional legal responsibility to report the matter that is casting some doubt on your ability to continue performing the audit. Then if withdrawal is permitted, then you can withdraw if it is appropriate to withdraw in that case. And if you are withdrawing, then discuss the same with the management, along with check out any professional or legal responsibility, if any, to report these matters, this withdrawal, reason for withdrawal, to any appropriate authority or to appointing authority. So this is how the answer will go, and this is an important question to be remembered. The next one. The next question covers a bit of Caro. I'm covering this because the topic is with respect to fraud. And for November 21, Caro 16 is applicable. Now, Caro has a clause which says that any fraud on or by the company, by officer, employee, or by the company, needs to be reported by the auditor. This question says, what would be the procedure performed by the auditor on those frauds? How the auditor is going to detect those frauds? So there are basic 4 points which the auditor has to perform. There are basically 4 procedures which the auditor has to perform. He has to cover in his scope while inquiring on fraud. What general points are there? Number 1, he'll inquire from the management. He'll inquire from TCWG also. any circumstances, any indications, any possibilities. In case the company is having an internal auditor, the auditor can examine, the external auditor can examine the report of internal auditor also, because the internal auditor would have also reported about fraud, fraudulent activities, suspected frauds. You can check out for the minutes of the meetings of audit committee, of supervisory board. There's something related to fraud might have been discussed. And the last point is very clear. You can obtain written representation from management that they have disclosed everything to the auditor. Whatever they have assessed, whatever risk they have assessed with respect to the fraud, they have disclosed it to the auditor. So these are the basic 4 procedures which an auditor can perform to inquire regarding fraud. Even if it is not asked about Caro, you can simply write this answer, that these are the basic procedures which any auditor will apply while inquiring fraud. Inquiry from management, one technique. Examining the report of auditor, examine the minutes of the meetings of the committee meetings, and then obtaining written representation from the management. But yes, if this question comes, Caro reference is important. Also remember section 143.12 and also remember essay 240. If the question specifically says about Caro only, then it's fine. Otherwise, you have to mention all 3 of them. Essay 240 also, section 143.12 along with the guidance note on audit of fraudulent reporting, and then you have to mention the Caro also. Okay, fine. Next question. Next question is again a nice question. Fraud chapter is a small chapter but covers many things. So we would be almost covering the entire chapter. Hardly things would be left in this chapter. This question says, what are the techniques the management will apply? What are the techniques the management will apply in committing the frauds by overriding the controls? If you remember, chapter 4 of your auditing and assurance paper covers internal control and the limitations of internal control. We discussed in chapter 4 also. One of the limitations of internal control is that the auditor needs to check that whether management has overridden the controls or not. And that was one limitation, that management is the whole sole person who is applying, who is deciding the nature and extent of control. So he can easily override that control for his benefit. So the question here is the same. When management is overriding the controls, what techniques he can apply to commit fraud? Now, very simple answer is, first, controls were applied to stop recording the fictitious transaction. Management overridden those controls and started recording fictitious transactions, especially at the period end, so that he can achieve the objective of increasing or decreasing the profit, whatever is the objective of the management. So one technique the management can apply is recording of fictitious entries. The management has a sole power in the estimates, in the judgment made by management. So he can inappropriately change his assumption. He can change his judgment to estimate the account balances, because there the auditor also cannot dispute much upon the concept of estimates made by the management. Delaying recognition in the financial statement, omitting certain transaction in the financial statement, recognizing those statements, those transactions which occurred in the current period in advance. These are all techniques which can be applied by management. So first 3 are very simple. 1, recording fictitious entries. 2nd, changing assumptions and judgment in the estimates amount. Not recording the transaction in the current period. Instead of that, omitting the transaction, advance recognition or delay in recognition. 4th is concealing facts. Hiding the facts which are necessary, which are having material effect on the financial statement, hiding those facts. 5th is engaging intentionally in certain complex transaction and structuring it in such a manner that it misrepresents the financial statement, financial position. And the 6th one is certain unusual transaction, maybe some related party transaction. You're altering the terms and condition. You're altering the records of those transactions for the benefit of committing fraud, for the benefit of the organization, maybe fraudulent benefit of the organization. So this is a specific question, guys. If the question says, what are the techniques committed by management in committing fraud while overriding the control, this is a specific answer for you. Recording of fictitious entries, inappropriately changing the assumptions, omitting, advancing, delaying the recognition in the financial statement, concealment of certain facts, engaging in complex instructions, complex transactions, and then altering the records, altering the terms relating to any significant or any unusual transaction. So this is the question. Fine with all. Moving forward. Next question. Now this is a big giant one. And in this topic, I have not only covered the answer of the questions given above, I have covered the entire thing. Whatever is not asked also, I have covered entire topic here. And I'm directly coming to the point. And out of these questions, 3 questions are there in the module. I merged all of them and gave a common answer for them. Out of these 3, the third one was there in July 21 paper. And that is why I'm again saying, again and again, we are taking the revision lectures because, and especially from the ICI's question bank, the module's question we are taking first, because the trend is that the questions are being asked from there, and that covers our concept also. Otherwise, we would also have done with this topic in the normal revision also. But taking those questions and then answering would give you much confidence. So this was there in the paper. Earlier I discussed in chapter 2 also. One question was there in the paper. July 21. So the topic now, listen carefully, is fraud risk factors. Those factors which indicate that there is a possibility of fraud, that can pressurize the management or the employee to commit a fraud, that gives an opportunity to management or employees to commit a fraud, is the fraud risk factor, are the fraud risk factors. But do remember, the fraud risk factors are different for fraudulent financial reporting, misstatement arising from fraudulent financial reporting, and fraud risk factors are different from misstatement arising due to misappropriation of assets. You cannot answer them in a common manner, because misstatement which arises from fraudulent financial reporting is often perpetrated by management, right? And misstatement arising from misappropriation of assets are often perpetrated by employees. So both have different angles. Both have all the 3 points. There could be reason of pressure, there could be an opportunity, there could be an attitude in both of them. But we'll be covering separately both. And I've given a very small crux of every point here. First, we will be discussing with fraud risk factors relating to misstatement arising from fraudulent financial reporting. 3 factors are there which induces management to commit fraud. One is pressure, one is opportunity, one is attitude. Now, what are the pressure points? Think sensibly, you will never get confused. The topic is misstatement arising from fraudulent financial reporting. Always keep in mind, these misstatements from fraudulent financial reporting are often done by or often perpetrated by management. Manipulation is mainly done by management only, not the employees, the management at the higher levels. So why they are doing it? Why they are manipulating the accounts, altering the accounts? They have certain pressure on them. What? There is a high degree of competition in the market. The margins are declining. The customer demand is declining. The entity is operating at a loss. There are operating losses in the organization. The cash flows are negative. There is some new accounting regulatory requirement which is against the policies of the company. So these are all pressure points for a company. There is a risk of hostile takeover. There are many other points. So an organization's manager doesn't want this all to be disclosed in the public domain. Otherwise their repo will go down soon. The market value will go down significantly. So they may try to inflate everything. They may try to do some scandal, some fraudulent reporting. These are the pressure points. So pressure points for fraudulent financial reporting. Think always from the angle of top management. He'll not be doing a simple thing. He's only doing this fraudulent financial reporting because he has a pressure. There's a high degree of competition. The significant decline in the demand of the customer. There is a chance of takeover by someone. There are severe losses, negative cash flows. These are the pressure points. I hope the logic is pretty clear. And that is why I'm repeating again. Now coming on to the opportunity part. Now what are the opportunities, sir, for a management? Again, think of a bigger picture, where he can commit easily misstatements arising due to fraudulent financial reporting. One is related party transaction. He has that opportunity in that transaction. Second, when the management, when the organization, when the company is having strong presence in the market, They can dominate the industry. So they can dictate their terms and conditions with their customers, with their suppliers. They can dictate. They can rule with their terms and conditions. And there they can easily do fraud. Third, as always, the management has the best amount as estimate. He can easily change the judgments. He can easily change the estimates because these are uncertain. It's very difficult for auditor to detect them. So he may change them also. Management has an opportunity. Can there be some unusual transaction? Yes, there can be. Some complex transaction. So transacting with subsidiaries, sub-subsidiaries, making that structure so complex and then rotating something at there. Similar like money laundering. Layering on that. That is the fourth point. And fifth is in case you have any branch, in case you have any bank account in the tax haven jurisdiction. Tax haven jurisdiction means the place where the taxes are nil or negligible. So you're rotating your transaction, you're revolving your transaction from there. That is an opportunity for them. So these are all opportunity points. When you find these points while auditing, you should think that there could be a risk of fraud. These are opportunities. The next comes attitude. So what are the attitude points here? Again, a very simple logic. We'll cover second point, third point, fourth point, fifth point first, and thereafter I'll come to first point. Second point first. Management is setting some unrealistic goals. Looking at the organization, the nature of the organization and the circumstances prevailing, this goal set by the management looks clearly unrealistic. Either he may try to increase or achieve some higher profits, which is unrealistic in the situation, or the management is trying to minimize the earning, which is again practically not possible. He's increasing the cost, trying to increase the costing part. So I should say that when an auditor sees that management has set certain unrealistic goals, then the auditor should feel that the management may try to fabricate things. He may try to misappropriate. He may try to present some fraudulent things in the financial statements. And this is where the auditor should apply his professional skepticism. Because this attitude of management, of setting this unrealistic goal in the situation, which seems clearly unrealistic, the goal set by the management, is an attitude by management which is reflecting a fraud risk factor. Third point, management is not improving or not remedying the deficiencies in internal control. Despite of the fact that the auditor has communicated certain deficiencies, significant deficiencies in internal control, the management is not at all interested in rectifying them. This attitude of management shows that it doesn't want that internal control deficiency gets rectified because there may be some fraudulent transaction which can occur. Fourth, the manager is not making any distinction between personal and business transactions. So he's putting all his business, personal transaction also in the business figures. This attitude of management reflects that he's actually committing fraud. Fifth point, the relationship between the auditor and the management is strained. The relationship is problematic. There are certain problematic relationship between the auditor and management. Maybe like example, the management is not allowing the auditor to access the files. Management is putting some time pressures on the auditor. Management is not providing the information to the auditor. This answer we'll be discussing later on in a separate question also. We'll be covering in the revision lecture also. So this kind of attitude from management reflects that there is some issue in the books of accounts. And the first point is the entity is known for its history of violations. So there is a possibility that the management may again commit some mistakes, some issues, there may be some non-compliances of laws. And there could be some fraudulent financial reporting. So these are 5 points from the perspective of management, that is misstatement arising from fraudulent financial reporting, attitude points. So I hope all the 3 points from the point of a management is pretty clear. I'll just recap them again. One was pressure. Now, management is pressurized not due to small things. It's pressurized because there is a high degree of competition. There's operating loss. There's a negative cash flow. Opportunity which a management has in big transactions, like related party transaction, complex transaction, tax haven jurisdiction transactions. Attitude the management is reflecting is unrealistic goals. Putting the personal transaction in the business accounts. Not providing auditors the information he requests for, putting pressure on the auditor. There's an unusual relationship, problematic relationship, strained relationship. not remedying the deficiency in the internal control. These are attitude points. I hope the concept is pretty clear now, and we are moving forward, which is risk factors arising from misstatement due to misappropriation of asset. Now the perception here is from the angle of employee. An employee is not going to do all that stuff. Employee is going to do some small thefts, embezzlements, misappropriations. So why the employee is doing it? Think. There may be some pressure. What pressure, sir? Employee may be told that you will be laid off soon. Employee is being told that your benefit plan is being changed. You will be demoted instead of promoted. You will not be given the reward which is your expectation. So maybe the employee is feeling bad. The employee feels that I am being laid off. My compensation plan, my benefit plans are being changed. I'm not getting what I'm expecting. So he may start doing fraudulent activities. This is the pressure on him. Opportunity angle says when a cashier is handling large amount of cash, he may misappropriate. When a go down keeper is handling some inventory items which are small in size of high value, high demand, he may misappropriate. That is an opportunity with him. There can be certain easily convertible asset that can be easily convertible into money. Easily convertible asset means what? The one which can be easily convertible into money, like gold, silver, diamond, etc. Fixed assets maybe, which are of small size, that can be easily carried away. So that can be theft. So these are all small points. Now fifth one, it's itself a question. A point of opportunity, but it is itself a question. The question is, inadequate internal control over assets is also an opportunity. Yes, sir. Absolutely an opportunity. Why? Because if there are controls, it would be difficult for employee to misappropriate. But if the controls are inadequate, if there are no internal control, employee has an opportunity to easily misappropriate the assets. Now, the question can come on this also. And as I said in the earlier part, there are three questions. And the second one is this: internal control misappropriation. Inadequate internal control of assets increases the susceptibility of misappropriation of assets. Enlist some examples. So here is the example. So these are all the examples. Very simple examples. Internal control is not adequate. That means segregation of duty is not there. There is a lack of control over the senior management's expenses. There's no record keeping. There's no system of authorization or approval. Physical safety is inadequate. No reconciliation of assets are being taking place. Physical assets and recorded assets. No or little documentation of transactions is there. Mandatory vacation. The concept of mandatory vacation applies to all those employees who are performing some key activities, key functions of the organization. There they need to mandatorily vacate for certain time. That funda is not here. So these all points indicate that there is a inadequate internal control, which may increase the chance of frauds and errors. Segregation of duty, lack of oversight of management expenditures, inadequate record keeping, lack of documentation, inadequate safeguards, lack of reconciliation. These are the inadequate controls. Examples of inadequate controls. Got it? The last one from the employee's point of view is attitude. One is the same as the earlier one in the misappropriation part which we are discussing in the first point. The same was there in the fraudulent financial reporting. Management is not taking action to rectify the deficiencies in internal control. The second one and third one says employee's behavior indicates that he is dissatisfied. He is dissatisfied with this treatment. He may be angry, and with that attitude, he may do certain kinds of fraud. Third point says you have found that the employee's lifestyle or behavior has changed. Till yesterday, he was coming on a scooter and today is coming in a BMW. So his lifestyle has changed. There is a full chance that some misappropriation has been done. The fourth one, the management's attitude of tolerating the thefts. Some petty thefts are occurring, small amount thefts are occurring, and nobody is there to check those, to respond to those. They're all tolerating, okay, that's fine. So this attitude will increase, may increase the chances of fraud and error in the organization. So these are the points from the angle of what? From the angle of employees committing misappropriation of assets. So this entire picture was there regarding fraud risk factor. You should remember this. You should learn this. Another important topic which we are covering here is circumstances relating to the possibility of fraud. Guys, listen very carefully. This is also another important question that can come in the upcoming exams. We've done it in topic number 7 of our book, but despite that, we are covering here. There are 4 basic circumstances which indicates the possibility of fraud. Listen carefully. The first one, there is a discrepancy in accounting records. I'll let you know in detail what this point says. Second, there are conflicting evidences, missing evidences. Third, there is a problematic relationship between auditor and management. And fourth are other reasons. I'll take one by one at a time because the institute will never ask you the entire question. They'll ask you one single point. Let's suppose first one. Discrepancy in accounting records can relate to the possibility of fraud. Explain. So I have to write down the logic and the examples for this. Now, what is this discrepancy in accounting record and why there is a chance that if there is a discrepancy, there is a possibility of fraud? Very easy point. First one. How can you say that there are discrepancies in the accounting record? So, first point. Transactions are not recorded. Transactions are not recorded in a complete and timely manner. And if they are recorded, they are improperly recorded. With respect to amount, with respect to classification, with respect to period, they are improperly recorded. Amount is not correctly recorded. Period is wrong. Classification is wrong. So there is a full possibility of fraudulent transaction here. Second, the transaction is recorded, but there is no supporting documentation, no supporting backup for that. There are cases when we have seen last minute adjustments. There is a full probability of fictitious entries. We have seen that employee is accessing more than what is required for his duties. We have got some tips, some complaints, some comments from some regulator, from some customer regarding the alleged fraud. So these are the circumstances which may indicate the possibility of fraud, and these are all covered under the main head, discrepancy in accounting records. There is some issue in the accounting record. What are the issues? Transactions are not being recorded, they are improperly recorded, they don't have any supporting documents with that, last minute adjustments in being made, employees are being seen accessing more than their duties require them to access, tips or complaints are being got regarding the frauds, alleged frauds. These are discrepancies. The second one is more important. Conflicting evidence and missing evidences. And I've tried to cover missing first in a sequence and then conflicting comes. When the auditor finds some documents missing, when the auditor finds that the certain checks were cancelled, they have been recorded as cancelled check, where are they? The bank should have returned. The bank might have returned those because general policies, bank returns the cancelled check. Where are those checks? Cancelled check which you have entered, cancelled. Inventory, some physical asset of a significant amount is missing. They have an entry in the books, but physically it is not existing anywhere. E-evidences are missing. E-evidences are missing, and that too those e-evidences which should have been retained as per the entity's record retention practice. Entities having a record retention practice of retaining e-evidence of 5 years. And this evidence of last year is deleted. Why? So missing e-evidences. Now coming to contradictory point, the last one first. The reply from the external party, external confirmation, and the entity record is at discrepancy. Documents given by the management are clearly seen being altered. They have an alteration on that. Transactions which are coming in the reconciliation, management doesn't have explanation why these are being put in the reconciliation. These are all evidences missing. Initial part is all missing. Document is missing, cancel check is missing, inventory is missing, physical asset is missing, electronic evidence is missing. There is no explanation on reconciliation items. These are all missing. Contradiction, document is altered. External parties reply and entities record is showing something else. These are missing things, and this is a circumstance which may relate to the possibility of fraud. Okay. Next point. We discussed in the above also the relationship between the auditor and the management is strained. Now this is the proper answer for that. The third circumstance which may indicate that there is a possibility of fraud is there is a relationship issue between auditor and the management. Problematic relationship. Now, how one can say that there is a problematic relationship between the auditor and the management? Look at the reasons. Management is denying access to the auditor. He's not allowing the auditor to check the records, facilities. He is not allowing the auditor to ask certain employees regarding something. Neither he is allowing the auditor to ask the IT staff or IT personnel something or IT access. The management is putting undue time pressure on the auditor. Management is delaying in providing the information requested by the auditor. Management is not at all interested in helping the auditor so that the auditor can access the e-files for testing. He wants to apply the computerized techniques on the electronic files, but management is not at all willing to allow him or to help him in accessing the files. Management is clearly unwilling that he won't be disclosing those things that he doesn't want to disclose. Management has asked, the auditor has asked him that you should disclose this thing because it is important for the users to know this thing. But his unwillingness to revise those disclosure or to change those disclosure. Auditor has asked him to rectify the deficiencies in internal control. Management is not willing to do that. So I've arranged the points here also in a systematic manner. 2 are denial of access. 3 are unwillingness from the management. And 2 are time pressure by the management. And they're not providing the information requested by the auditor. So these conditions reflects that there is a problematic relationship between the auditor and the management, and this is one circumstance that can relate to the possibility of fraud. So do remember, either the examiner can put C point before you or B point or A. The entire question won't be asked. So you have to remember each as a separate question, A, B, C, and both B and C are more important as compared to A. Okay, so remember everything. The next point. We're done with the module part, covering the other major concepts of this chapter. The 9th one, entirely hidden and an entirely different topic. Conditions which increases the risk of frauds and errors. List down certain conditions which can increase the risk of fraud and error. Now there are specifically 5 points for this, only 5 points. And again, easy points. If these conditions exist, there is a full possibility that the fraud and error chances would be more. First one, weakness in the designing of internal control system. Your internal control system design is poor. Or in case the design is fine, but the procedural part is not being performed as per the designed procedures. So first point says there is a weakness in the design of internal control. The non-compliance is there with the laid down control procedures. So the full chance is there that the risk of fraud and error will be there here. You have a doubt on the integrity and honesty of management. You have a doubt on the competence of the management. Like a single person is dominating the entire organization. There is a full chance that here the risk of fraud and error would increase. There is unusual pressure on the entity. How, sir? Working capital is inadequate. Operating losses are coming. Negative cash flow is there. Pressure on the entity. Same like the pressure point. Unusual transactions are occurring, like transaction with related parties specifically. Full chance that there could be a risk of fraud and error. And the 5th one says the auditor is getting difficulty in obtaining sufficient appropriate evidences. Maybe there is some restriction imposed by management. So there again is a chance that management is doing something bad. So this is conditions. Do not mix up the answers. The 3 answers are different. Fraud risk factor answer was different. Circumstances relating to the possibility of fraud covering majorly 3 points, they were different. And the condition which increases the risk of fraud and error is an entirely different question. Here the conditions are specifically asked. The weakness in the system, the non-complying with the procedures, management's integrity and competence is in doubt, entity is under unusual pressure, transactions are there, unusual sort of transactions, there's a problem in obtaining sufficient appropriate evidences. These are the conditions. So note this out. This is an important question. Now, coming back to 240. 240, one part we did, one question we did, that in case exceptional circumstances are there, which creates a doubt on the auditor's ability to continue what he has to do, which already done. Now, 2 more points we'll be covering here. The 10th one. This is a general question, but I have specifically put this so that you should know what are the general responsibility of auditor in relation to the fraud in the audit of financial statement. Basically, the point here is, what is the auditor's responsibility for fraud? And the answer you could start from the Essay 200 part. That an auditor is only responsible for obtaining reasonable assurance that the financial statement as a whole are free from material misstatement either due to error or due to fraud. But still, is he not responsible? Is he not responsible to perform proper procedures for detecting the fraud? Yes, sir, he is responsible, because he should think always that the risk of not detecting a fraud is always greater than the risk of not detecting an error, because fraud are done by management. They can easily override the controls. Management can easily override the control. Management can easily present the fraudulent financial information. So he should apply what? The third point says auditor should apply an attitude of professional skepticism throughout the audit. He should be alert. He should be having a questioning mind. He should be critically assessing every audit evidence which he have got, because there is a full chance and there is a full probability that risk of not detecting a fraud will be always higher than the risk of not detecting a error. So this is general responsibility of the auditor. So this question is basically only for the knowledge purpose, like lesser of chances to be asked. The next one is a big giant again. And the question says, and let me give an example before that. Let's suppose you are the auditor, you're done with the audit, and thereafter some frauds emerge in that entity of which you have already done the audit. Will you be responsible for that? You just can't write the simple answer that if you have performed in a very reasonable manner, in a diligent manner, not in a negligent manner, we won't be responsible. No, you cannot write this like this. This is a very small portion. The actual answer goes like this. Listen and read simultaneously. The first point you have to definitely write is there are inherent limitations of audit. And that is why there is always an unavoidable risk that some material misstatement would not be able to be detected by the auditor, even though he performs his audit, he plans the audit as per the standard. Despite the auditor has planned and performed the audit with the SAs, in accordance with the SAs, there is still a chance that some material misstatement may not be detected, and this is due to inherent limitation of audit. And this is a proof that auditor can prove that I am not responsible, but no. In case there is a discovery of material misstatement due to fraud after the audit has been done, can someone blame the auditor that you have not followed the basic principle of audit? Can directly someone can blame? No, sir. Directly, you cannot blame the auditor that he has not performed his basic principle. That is why this fraud has arisen. No. Now the question arises whether the auditor has done his audit as per the basic principles will be determined on 2 bases. One, whether he has applied audit procedures adequate as per the circumstances, and whether the audit report is suitable and is made on the basis of those procedures or not. You have to check that out. Who is going to prove this? That auditor has applied appropriate procedures, appropriate in the circumstances. He has made his report on the basis of those procedures only, and the report is suitable. The auditor himself has to prove. The auditor himself has to prove that he has done his work with reasonable skill and care. And his working papers, his documentation will help him to do so. If he can prove with the help of those working papers that he has followed adequate procedure, which was necessary in the current situation, he will not be held responsible. But if in case he doesn't prove, he may be responsible. Although at the last point says, the auditor may suspect fraud or identify the fraud. But obviously he's not a judge, he's not a court who can make a legal determination that fraud has actually occurred. So he's not be legally determining whether this is fraud or not, but if he finds any fraud, suspected or actual, he thinks it is actual fraud, he must report it to the management, to those charged with governance, to the regulatory authority if the law requires the same. So how this answer is wonderfully drafted. Just look at the beauty of the answer, and it is important for you. It is important for you. The answer is, will the auditor be held responsible? A direct question can come and an indirect part can cover. And an indirect question can come. First, starting with inherent limitation. Then saying that auditor has adhered to the basic principle. If he has, he will not be guilty. Adherence to principle means applying audit procedure appropriate in the circumstances and making the report on the basis of those procedures. The auditor has to prove that with the help of his working paper that he has exercised reasonable skill and care. He has done all this work as per the procedure required in the circumstances. He will not be responsible. And the last point said that he is not there to make legal determination of whether fraud has actually occurred. He will just suspect or identify the fraud and report them. So that is all about chapter number 5. Maximum topics in this chapter we have covered. This is a very small chapter comprising of certain questions, and one question is sure, as comes in every attempt. One question from every chapter is there. So this is all about chapter number 5. I hope this chapter would be comfortable to you, and do not skip any of the chapters, especially this one also. Thank you.